Well, thanks for coming, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I recently got excited about something I was doing that was, I got really excited about PWAs. So I started to look into it and put this presentation together on web workers, service workers, and PWAs. Who am I? I'm a full stack developer. I'm a freelancer. I was a digital nomad for a while, scuba guide. That was my office on the Caribbean. It was cool. That's my email. You can find the code for this. There's not a whole lot of code for this, but there's a little bit of code for this on the GitHub there. And if you're into it. So what am I doing? I am a poverty abolitionist. The world used to be flat. We used to buy and sell people. We used to make kids work in factories. I believe it's time we should abolish poverty. If you're interested in that, come talk to me about it. It's really my jam. If you guys are into it, this hacktivism for economic justice, get in touch with me through that. I'm looking to find people who are interested in helping out projects around this. But tonight's, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. At PDX Node, we're going to talk about web workers, service workers, and PWAs. So I'm sure you all know regular web pages. They're just regular. It's just your HTML and your CSS. If you do Control Escape, oh, I can't do it in full screen, but if you do Control Escape, you can see all the processes that are going on in Chrome. And what's interesting is that the web page, and it's really actually really cool about the JavaScript engine, right? It runs in the event loop. And what that means is the code is actually pretty easy to think about, but you also get kind of the simulation of multiple processes and stuff, right? You can do async stuff. But you really get limited access to CPU, disk, and memory. And you end up with the event loop just being one process per tab. Are you guys all familiar with the event loop? Is that? Yeah. Okay.
Could you maybe give just like a really, really quick overview for everybody who's not?
Yeah, okay, got it. So what's the event loop? The event loop is like a while loop, and it's like while there's stuff to do. And then it does stuff. And when it gets to certain places in stuff, it'll actually go back to the top of the event loop and look for other events. So you wind up with kind of this queue of all these events happening, and then it processes each event as it comes up to the top of the queue. Sometimes in the processing of an event, it'll get to a place where it can actually put that on pause and go do another one, which is why you'll actually see in the code later, I wrote myself a bug that took me about an hour to figure out because I wrote while true. While true is not friendly for the event loop. But that's really the gist of it. If you're familiar with computers and you have like multiple processors and you have multiple CPUs, like this computer has 8 processors, or yeah, 8 processors more or less available. With regular web pages, you can really only have your stuff run on one processor. And so if you want to do something that like takes, if you want to use all 8 processors from your web page, you can do that now. And you can do that with something called web workers. If you've ever seen this like page unresponsive, this is because the event loop got stuck, right? And so this is kind of the symptom of what we're going to try to solve, is so we don't have this problem. So web workers, they have 2 basic things. You can create another process, and you can pass messages between the processes. So you don't get shared memory or anything like that. I think there are some rules around local storage that you can get access to data that way too. So here's an example of a script tag on a regular web page. So you can see here, we're going to create this new worker, and this worker.js is a file I'm going to show you here in a minute. What we're doing here in this piece of code is we're listening for an event, which is a message event. And when that message event happens, we're gonna append some text to this result ID. I'm going to show you guys this in an example. But if you can just imagine there's an element with the ID result, we're going to actually add to its inner HTML the data from the event, which was passed to us in the message, and a new. Now here in this this bit here, so this is gonna be what the web worker sends us. Right, so we are now a web page called index.html. So when we create web worker, it actually goes out, loads this JS file. And now we're going to listen for these message events from in this process that's happening on index.html, right? Now this one, what we're going to do here is we're going to set a timeout, and we are going to post a message to the web worker. So we can communicate to the web worker through messages, and the web worker can communicate to us through messages, right? And so this is how we can get like useful stuff in and out of the web worker. The web worker doesn't really have any like data or context available to it, so we really have to send it through messages. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions about that? Yeah.
What can you pass it as a message? Does it have to be like some bit simple types like strings
Yeah.
and ints, maybe an object with those,
Yeah.
but not like a DOM element?
You could pass it a copy of a DOM element. You could pass it a copy of DOM info, but the web worker doesn't have any access to the DOM. So you can't use like jQuery with it. Yeah. In the web worker, you can load in other scripts. So you can load in Lodash and other libraries like that. But the data that you pass back and forth has to be like basic data types. I think you can do a JavaScript object. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, guess it gets like stringified.
Yes.
Or the equivalent of that, whether it
Exactly.
actually does that, it just sort of creates a value type out of it and copies it over down.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't pass a reference or anything like that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So now here's our worker.js. And so we are going to listen for messages from the main page with a string as we wait for these outgoing messages. So when we get into this, we find self, right? And that's us. And now we're going to add this event lister. And this is just like we did on the previous page, right? And so now we're going to say, okay, worker got a message. This is a horrible Fibonacci number generator. It's designed to be very poor performance. But it's designed like that to show the value of the web worker, right? And then here, we are going to, so this loop here, this is where that while true didn't work. So here we set an interval, and then every 200 milliseconds we calculate a Fibonacci number, and then we send it back to the index web page. So, right. So this is a lot of the comments that we actually just talked about. Questions. So yes, you can do multiple processes, right? Like we had those 2 scripts, so now we had 2 event loops running, so we could get 2 CPUs going. We can use this in about 94% of browsers. Like I said, no DOM access. And in terms of like practical applications, one of these is the crypto miner malware. Like that makes a great web worker, right? Because you can just spin up all these CPUs that are not being used for anything usually. And then another one, my sister pointed this one out to me, which is PDF.js, which is a library that will process PDFs on the browser. And I think it does it through web workers. I was poking around the code, and I thought that was a pretty cool application. All right, so you guys remember the code we just looked at. So here's that code in action. So we're gonna go there, and now we're gonna look at this. And sorry it's so small, but you can see that we're getting our Fibonacci numbers.
Oh yeah.
And now. Okay, so if you go to that GitHub, you'll see there's a couple. I added these like sidebars. So we can do import scripts. We can also do HTML requests. So you gotta read the README, and this is text from the README. Here you can see where the page actually sends the message, and the worker got the message, abolish poverty. Okay, we ran this twice. And then when we got that message, we changed from buy pretty things to abolish poverty. So that's it. So this is an example of our web worker. I think our web worker is still
Calculate.
Oh, it's still going down. So if if you guys can see my CPUs, so we have 104 on a CPU. So we're using like 100% of a CPU in this page, but it's still responsive. And if we didn't have the web worker going, we'd probably get that unresponsive page, like Facebook page, right? So that's really the value of web workers. Do you guys have any questions about that, about what happened here? Yeah.
Can you dive into the worker and put a debugger on?
Yeah. Let's see here. Now this is, so I'm a little improv here, but I think we got it. Yeah, no, it's jamming. It's like, I'm the worst Fibonacci thing ever.
So like you set a breakpoint in that Fibonacci pattern.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I don't know. I wonder if that'll happen. Let's try that. That sounds fun. Okay. All right. Right. And so it did break point because you can see my CPU went down.
What's X now?
X is 3. Yeah. Nice. Whew. Service workers. Now, service workers are web workers. Service workers have a KNIUs of about 74%, and that's going to change in the next version of Edge Safari and iOS Safari. So it's going to jump up to be pretty mainstream. Service workers give you like all that web worker stuff, plus you get a JavaScript proxy to edit responses of your page network requests. So we're going to talk about that. And you get an installation lifecycle, so it's almost like an app. And you get push notifications and other app-like stuff. Google is really excited about PWAs. Google's really, really excited about this. So how many of y'all know what a proxy is? And are like, we should skip? Okay. Okay, so what is a proxy? A proxy is basically an intermediary for requests from clients seeking resources to other servers. So when my laptop wants to go out and talk to slides.com to get this presentation, it's on the Wi-Fi. So the first proxy that it hits is the Wi-Fi, right? Then that Wi-Fi access point is going to hit the upstream router, and that's another proxy. And so it's just proxies all the way up. It's like turtles all the way down, proxies all the way up. And so this is almost like this is like something that never happens, right? When was the last time you plugged directly into a web server, except on your if you're developing on your own computer, right? If you're using the internet, you're getting a proxy in the middle, and they can do all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff going on there, NAT, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Butterflies.
Curse
Yeah,
words.
right. No, it's great. It's a good time.
Curse words, hearts.
Magic wands. Or marijuana cigarettes.
So we can also get a caching proxy, and if you've ever, if you've ever, are you guys familiar with a caching proxy? Right. So like a CDN, like CloudFront is a caching proxy, right? Like I've got my website in a bucket, in an S3 bucket, and then I put CloudFront in front of it. And then when the clients want the data, CloudFront only gets it when it knows it's out of date, right? So that's that's a caching proxy. Okay, so if you wanted to do an offline web app with a service worker, you could make something called a PWA. And so then your service worker becomes the proxy, right? It has a proxy, a JavaScript proxy, to edit responses to your page's network requests. This all happens in the browser, and it has API for caching. And so then if you don't have access to the internet, you can still make network requests based on your cache data. That's my attempt to explain that, how to do. All right, cool. All right, yes, thumbs up, I win. Service workers also have an installation lifecycle. And so I'm going to go over this just briefly to make you aware of it because it's kind of weird. It's like a new thing for web pages. And there's tons of documentation on it. Google's really hot for this. Basically, you can register your service worker with this, right? So just give it the URL and some options, and it's promised. And then the browser will download your service worker about every 24 hours. And these scripts will, if they're updated, they'll wait to become activated. So we'll see this kind of happen in a little bit. But then the service worker really just listens for events. And then whenever there's a fetch event, so network requests will go through, we'll create a fetch event, and we can respond with stuff. All right. This is, I think I already jabbered on this, but yeah, it's really kind of like a native app. It's kind of cool. In fact, I think Chrome and Android are going to make API events to put it on your phone's like desktop, right? So you can get an icon with it. This service workers, serviceworky.rs has some really good examples on it. If you want to see some really cool examples, I'll show this basic one. And all right, let's get into this. That's not helping. All right. Okay, so this bit here is the demo, right? And it's really just this one. We're going to show icon. And so really, we're just going to look at kind of the code that's going on in this bit here. So here's where we register our service worker, right? And then this bit of code is basically the UI code for what's going on here. Now in the service worker, we're gonna have these named caches, and you can update the caches as you go. So these are our pre-cache URLs, so we can pre-cache basically resources that we need for our application. Do you guys remember app cache? Or was it application cache? Yeah, I think its most famous blog post was application cache sucks or something like that. So this is kind of like this was somebody was like, all right, let's do something better. So we came up with this. So here we can basically pre-cache this index.html and all of our stuff we need for the app. So then we listen for the install event, and when install happens, we basically wait, and then we're going to go to our caches, and we're going to open this pre-cache cache, and then we're going to cache a bunch of stuff, and then this skip waiting will activate any service workers that are waiting to be activated. Do you guys remember that bit? All right, I hope you do. That's what it does. The service workers, if you update the service worker, it'll wait until it's activated before it starts running. All right, so then this bit of code here is really just cleaning up the old caches if we made a new cache. It's not that awesome. But then here's the really interesting part where we talk about the proxy, right? So all of this stuff is just a regular service worker, right? We were adding listeners and event and all that kind of stuff. Then we get down here and we get this fetch event. So this fetch event is when we get a network request. And I think this is a Google page, so you can see here they're very concerned about Google Analytics. And so what we're saying is if the request starts with our location, then we go to our caches and we try to find a match for the request, and then we just send the response, right? So if cache response, send the response. If not, then we open the runtime cache, right? You remember the runtime cache? And then with that cache, we run fetch to get the request, and then we add the response. We put the response into the cache, and then we return the response, right? So, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. And with this, between the pre-cache URLs and this bit here, we have everything we need to make an offline web app, right? You can cache all your images, all your resources, all your styling, your markup, your JavaScript, and then anything you need at runtime, you can do here. So when we got to this part here, when we get to this fetch, if fetch actually returns an error because the network's down, we could just return a default image, right? So we could also start to edit our responses, right? Like we could change everything that's in the response, right? We could make it pirate speak if we wanted. Or yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of stuff you can do inside this proxy. It doesn't have to just do this. So it turns out like PWAs are hot and people are into it, and I wouldn't actually. I mean, I got into it because I wanted to learn it for this talk, and also I just wanted to learn it. But you really don't need to know much about PWAs to actually build an offline app like this. Like if you guys are into Vue.js, here's how to get one, and you just get your regular app, and it's got PWA. No, it's good. It's good. I was super into this. Yeah, I'm just like still a poverty abolitionist, and thank you. And that's my jam. What were you guys saying? Yeah, thank you.